Kamen Rider, the long-running superhero franchise created by Toei and the sister series of Super Sentai that it airs alongside. Since 2000, we've been getting new Kamen Rider series following different motifs every year. Kamen Rider is known for its flexibility and originality of its motif and premise. It was originally created as a manga series called Skullman that was similar to Batman. However, in 1971, they created a low-budget, live-action television series based on Skullman, where they completely changed the premise to a cyborg biker who's a grasshopper-themed superhero known for his superhuman jump and kick. It was off and on until the 2000s, where they started experimenting with some new motifs, such as trains, knights, and oni, and the 9th series in 2008 chose vampires and other classic monsters, such as Frankenstein, werewolves, and merman. They called it Kamen Rider Kiva and created a heroic story about the personal growth of a young man who's the half-breed son of the queen of a crystal vampiric race called Fangires, and it follows two stories, with one being set in the present, following the protagonist, Kamen Rider Kiva, and one being set in the 80s, following his father. It was the average quality for a Kamen Rider series, and it was the first Kamen Rider series that I completed. While it had less use of the Kamen Rider motorcycle, it still had a lot of interesting fight scenes. So in this video, I'm counting down the top 10 fight scenes of Kamen Rider Kiva. Number 10. Megumi vs. Rook and Kiva vs. the Warthog Fangire. One of the major villains of the first two arcs of the series is a lion Fangire named Rook. His final battle and story arc concludes in episode 31, where they reveal how he was wounded by Yuri, the mother of one of the main characters, Megumi, and was a love interest for the main protagonist's father back in the 80s. This episode has non-linear narrative showing two fights against the same villain using the Kamen Rider Ixa suit, a power that gets passed on throughout the series between secondary characters, and it shows in the present the destruction of Rook by the hands of Megumi, while Kiva fights the Warthog Fangire, another monster present at the time. Number 9. Octopus Fangire Race and Fight. In the second episode of the series, Kamen Rider uses his motorcycle, Machine Kiva, for the first time in the season. There aren't many episodes where Kiva uses his bike, but this is one of the coolest fights, as the fight has him racing against a Fangire who uses wheels for legs, and Kiva uses the octopus monster's own tentacles to make them spin out so he can destroy her with a rider kick. Plus, the fight has a good start while on foot, where Kiva finds her hiding and fights him, leading to Kiva getting smashed through a window. Honestly, the fight scene is very good, and it was a pleasure to dub over it in my fan film, Power Rider Vampire Lord. Number 8. Kiva vs. Grizzly Fangire. In the Kiva series, the two timeline story arcs slowly reveal more about the characters' backstories. His mother was the queen of the Fangires, and her job was to hunt down Fangires who fell in love with humans and destroy them. However, she fell in love with a Fangire hunter herself and ended up breaking this rule. One of her survivors, who escaped her, comes back in the present while his human wife is dying, and goes berserk and comes in conflict with the Kamen Riders. One fight scene on a road is excellent. It has Kamen Rider Kiva failing to defeat him using his werewolf Garulu form. A part of this is because the Grizzly Fangire has an interesting way of blocking Kamen Rider's attacks using his claws. Number 7. Kiva vs. the Horse Fangire. Tokusatsu shows usually have one of the coolest fights in the first episode, so people will get hooked. And Kamen Rider Kiva does this pretty well. The first monster, the Horse Fangire, is actually scary and has a good fight scene against the protagonist, going far enough to send cars toward him. Also, There's a sword fight between them that's pretty entertaining, and I like this fight scene, so I ended up using it in my fan film, Power Rider Vampire Lord. Number 6. Ixa versus Kiva versus the Spider Fangire. In the first arc of Kamen Rider Kiva, one of the major villains is the Spider Fangire, of which he's the first Fangire seen in the series because he's in its opening. Episode 9 introduces the secondary rider, Kamen Rider Ixa, a suit system that gets passed around, and it's connected to the Fangire Hunter organization Wonderful Blue Sky. In Episode 12, there's conflict between the Ixa's user and Kiva, and they clash while the Spider Fangire escapes them. Then, Ixa and Kiva get into a biker race through tunnels that results in a rider kick between the two riders where they jump off and collide, and Kiva wins. Number 5. Blue Sky versus Kiva. Speaking of the wonderful Blue Sky organization, in episode 39, Kiva battles against a necromancer Fangire called the Mantis Fangire. He manages to slay the monster and many of the evil Fangires he revived, but then he's confronted by Kamen Rider Ixa, who works for the Fangire Hunter organization, who try to kill Kiva and fail. Then Bishop, one of the overarching villains, comes and corrupts Kiva, causing his Fangire side to come out. This fight scene has an advantage because it's shot near a dam, which is an interesting location to film fight scenes. Number 4. Time-altering battle. In episode 27 and 28, Kamen Rider Ixa's main user goes back in time to prevent the injury of a person by the hands of the Cicada Fangire, while Kiva battles against the Crab Fangire in the present. Ixa succeeds, but while in the past he has to save the Cicada Fangire, and then goes back to the present where he helps Kiva, but because he altered the past, the Cicada Fangire is still alive, and they have to destroy both of them. Kiva's battle with the Crab Fangire is very good because the crab has a good way of using its pinchers to block punches. Also, Ixa uses a rider kick in this fight, and it's really good. Number 3. Sun Gazer Fangire versus Kiva and Saga. In episode 42, there's a fight against a lizard-themed Fangire who turns out to be the leader of the wonderful Blue Sky organization who was injured and was turned into a Fangire through a transfer of life energy by an anti-hero called Kamen Rider Saga, who's Kiva's half-brother. There's an excellent fight in and outside of a building where Saga throws Kiva into a wall using a whip weapon. Also, the Sun Gazer Fangire has an outstanding lizard shield that he uses in a pretty decent way. Number 2. Prawn Fangire Dockyard Fight. Back in episode 8, there's a fight between Kiva and a prawn Fangire at the dockyards. The fight has excellent use of the surroundings at the dockyards, and the choreography of the fight is pretty good. Also, this fight leads to a giant battle because the prawn Fangire collects Fangire souls, allowing him to form a colossal monster, combining them, called the Six Pillars Sabaoth. Kiva defeats it using his Castle Doran. Before I reveal my number 1 pick, here are some honorable mentions.
In the moonlit midnight race, shadows dance and secrets chase. Cold winds whispering, heartbeats lost in ancient spars. Power Rider, Vampire Lord, last survivor of a twisted pace, shadows of a forsaken age. Power Rider, Vampire Lord, yeah, legends of the past so bold, legends whisper, tales retold. All the shadows, courage is still in the night where I belong. Power Rider,
Number 1. Kiva versus Saga and Rat Fangires. In episode 36, the story follows the conflict between Kiva and Saga, and there's a Fangire called the Rat Fangire that can create duplicates of itself. In episode 36, Revolution, Sword Legend, it has Saga and Kiva fighting the Rat Fangires at a fountain. First of all, the fight is well choreographed and uses the fountain pretty well. Plus, the fight begins with Kiva shattering one of the Fangires using a rider kick instead of happening at the end. For these reasons, I give this the number 1 spot on the list of Kamen Rider Kiva action scenes. Overall, while Kamen Rider Kiva may not be the best Kamen Rider series by a long shot, it still has some good action scenes, music, character arcs, decent stories, and excellent suits. Some of the fight scenes are mediocre, but the good ones outweigh the bad ones, and this series has a story and style that makes up for it, and results in a superhero series that's definitely worth watching, even after all these years. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video.